While this podcast isn't rated explicit, the content may not be suitable for younger listeners. Welcome to Sex for Saints, the Christian couple's guide to great sex. I am your host, certified sex and marriage coach, Amanda Lauder. This is episode 368. Are you prioritizing your kind of sex over connection? Welcome to Sex for Saints, a podcast for Christian couples. My goal with this podcast is to help enlighten, educate, and inspire you to understand yourself, your spouse, and your sexuality better. I talk about sex in a way you probably haven't heard before. I'm bold, I'm direct, but I keep everything in line with my strong Christian values. Are you ready? Let's go. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I feel like I haven't been with you forever. I recorded the previous podcasts weeks in advance because I was going to be going to Italy with my husband. He had to go for work and I was able to join him, and we had the most wonderful time together. Of course, I love being with him and spending one-on-one time with him, but being in this romantic place and seeing new things together and experiencing new adventures was just so wonderful and just adds a layer to our relationship that I love so much. But I am happy to be back with you. So have you ever found yourself frustrated because your spouse doesn't want sex the way you want it? Or maybe you felt disconnected because your partner doesn't approach sex the way you do? If so, you are not alone. Today, I want to explore an idea that might make you pause for a moment. Sometimes we want our form of sex more than we want the connection it can create with our spouse. Now, this is something that I see all the time with the couples that I work with. One or both partners have a very specific idea of what sex should look like, how often it should happen, who should initiate, what it should feel like, even what counts as real, and I'm saying real in air quotes, real sex. And when their spouse doesn't align with that vision, it creates frustration, disconnection, and resentment. And I get it. We all have our preferences. We all have the ways that we feel most comfortable expressing our sexuality. But when we get so attached to our way, we miss out on the deeper intimacy that sex can create. So let's talk about that today. So when I say our sex, I mean the way we personally define what good sex should be. Now, maybe for you, that means sex is spontaneous, passionate, and adventurous. Maybe it means it's slow and sensual and deeply emotional. Maybe it means a certain level of frequency or a specific routine that makes you feel safe. Maybe it's lights off or only touching and being touched in certain areas and ways. Whatever it is, it's totally normal to have preferences. The issue arises when those preferences become the priority rather than connection itself. So I once worked with a couple where the husband loved spontaneous sex. He wanted to feel like his wife wanted him, like she was so into him that she couldn't help herself. Meanwhile, his wife was more of a planner. She needed mental space and emotional connection first before engaging in sex. So when he tried to initiate spontaneously, she often turned him down, not because she didn't want sex or she didn't like it, but because she needed to feel ready for it. Now, over time, he started to see rejection as a lack of desire, and she started to feel pressure every time he initiated. And the irony with this is they both deeply wanted connection, but he was prioritizing his version of sex, spontaneity, over the opportunity to build a mutually fulfilling experience, and she was prioritizing her ideal of being ready. Neither of them were getting what they actually wanted. Now, another woman I coached told me that she only felt comfortable having sex if it was deeply emotional and romantic. She wanted candles, eye contact, slow touches, what she called real intimacy. But her husband was more of a physical and playful kind of guy. Sometimes he just wanted to connect through laughter and fun in bed. To him, connection could come through sexual playfulness, not just deep emotional bonding. So for a long time, she resisted his approach because it didn't match what she thought meaningful sex should look like. But when she started to open up to his version, she realized something. He wasn't disconnected. He just connected differently. So why do we get attached to our form of sex? There are a lot of reasons we get fixated on sex being a certain way. So here are a few of the most common ones. The first is control and certainty. Sex is vulnerable, and good sex requires us to be open, responsive, and engaged with another person. If we have a specific routine, expectation, or structure around sex, it can make us feel more in control and less exposed. So I worked with a husband who always wanted sex to happen right before bed. In the same way, every time. When his wife suggested trying something different, like a midday quickie or sex in the shower, he resisted. Not because he didn't like the idea, but because his routine made him feel secure, and changing it felt risky. Number 2, personal validation. Sometimes our version of sex is tied to how we see ourselves. If we feel like we're a good lover only when sex looks like a certain way, we might resist anything that doesn't align with that. So a wife I coached told me that she felt like a bad wife if she didn't initiate sex in a way that was highly sensual and seductive. But after having kids, that kind of initiation felt really forced. And when her husband suggested she could just cuddle up with him in bed as initiation, she struggled because in her mind, that wasn't sexy enough. She was prioritizing her idea of sex over the connection that they could have created in a simpler way. The third is cultural and religious narratives. So many of us grew up with messages of what sex should be. Maybe we were taught that men should always initiate, or that sex should always be passionate and exciting, or that women should be the gatekeepers. These ingrained beliefs can make it hard to see sex as something fluid and adaptable. I once coached a couple where the wife was taught that sex should always be emotional, and the husband was taught that sex should be frequent and passionate. They were both struggling because neither of them could meet the other's rigid expectations. So when they finally realized that they had been taught 2 different scripts, they were able to let go of those old beliefs and create something new together. I just wanted to give you a quick reminder. My 3-week live class for couples, Cleave, Counsel, and Laboring Together, is coming up soon, and spots are filling fast. If you want to learn how to apply the principles of your temple covenants to build a stronger, more intimate marriage, this class is for you. You'll get weekly instruction, live coaching, and practical tools to help you and your spouse cleave to one another, counsel as equals, and labor side by side in your relationship. The class starts June 23rd and from 7 to 9 p.m. And we also have classes on June 30th and July 7th. It's $399 for the live class plus coaching. But if you sign up by June 1st and use the code MarriageEarlyBird25, you can receive $50 off. Space is limited, so don't wait because it is filling up quickly. Head to amandalauder.com/strengthen to grab your spot now. Another reason we might cling tightly to our form of sex is because it feels safe. Maybe we're not fully comfortable with ourselves, our bodies, our desires, our sexual expression. Maybe sex feels really foreign and awkward, or even a little bit shameful. And when that's the case, we often try to create conditions that feel the most manageable, the most familiar, the most in control. That might look like only having sex at night with the lights off in one specific position, or needing everything to feel emotionally just right before you can be sexual, or relying on a rigid script. Foreplay always looks like this. Intercourse follows. It lasts this long, and then we're done. Now, here's the thing. That comfort zone isn't bad. It may have served you really well during certain seasons of your life. But when we use it as a way to avoid discomfort or to bypass deeper intimacy, we have to stop and ask ourselves, why? Why am I only willing to have sex in this very specific way? Why do I resist something different even when my spouse is trying to connect with me? Why do I feel anxious or guarded when sex veers outside of what I know? I'm not comfortable might seem like a good answer, and I don't want to dismiss that. Discomfort is real, but it's not the end of the conversation. Unless something is out of alignment with your values, unless it's violating your integrity or your safety, then discomfort is actually something to explore, not avoid. So let yourself get curious. Are you uncomfortable because you don't feel confident in your body? Are you carrying shame from your past? Were you taught that certain things were wrong or dirty and haven't fully questioned those beliefs? Are you initiating or saying yes out of obligation and now trying to control the situation so it feels less vulnerable? Understanding your why can unlock so much, because once you identify the root of your discomfort, you can begin to work through it with compassion and intentionality. And the more comfortable you get with yourself and with sex in general, the less you'll need to control it. You'll become more open, more flexible, and ultimately more connected to both yourself and your spouse. This is so much of the work that I do in coaching, really understanding the why behind things and then working through them with that compassion and intentionality. So if you notice yourself clinging to one way of doing sex or resisting your partner's approach, I want you to ask yourself why. Don't stop at "I'm not comfortable." Dig deeper. You might discover that the connection you've been craving is waiting for you on the other side of that discomfort. So let's talk about shifting from my sex to our sex. What do we do about this? How do we move away from prioritizing our version of sex and toward using sex as a way to truly connect? So I want you to ask yourself, what do I really want? Take a moment and reflect. Do I want a specific kind of sex, or do I want to feel close and connected? If my spouse approached sex differently, but I feel deeply connected, would that be enough? Am I willing to expand my idea of what sex can be? The second thing is to get curious about your spouse's experience. So instead of assuming your way is the only way, ask your spouse, how do you feel most connected during sex? What does meaningful sex look like for you? Is there anything about our current sex life that feels limiting to you? The third thing is we can communicate and experiment. So instead of assuming sex has to look a certain way, talk about it. Try meeting each other halfway. Maybe your spouse craves more emotional connection before sex while you want more playfulness and spontaneity. How can you create a sexual dynamic that honors both? How can it be collaborative? And fourth is embrace flexibility. Great sex in marriage is about adaptability. Some seasons will be filled with passionate, exciting sex. Others will be slower, more intentional, and deeply intimate. So instead of rigid expectations, think about sex as a journey, one that evolves and changes as you and your spouse do. So if you find yourself longing for sex but constantly feeling unsatisfied, ask yourself, am I really longing for connection, or am I longing for a specific version of sex? When we let go of rigid expectations and open ourselves to collaborative sex, sex that is co-created rather than dictated, we open the door to deeper intimacy, greater satisfaction, and a more fulfilling marriage. So this week, I encourage you to reflect on what sex means to you and your spouse. Be willing to expand, to listen, and to create a sexual relationship that isn't about your kind of sex, but about your marriage's kind of sex. All right, my friends, that's all I have for you today. Remember to sign up for my class because spots are filling up quickly. Have a great week, and remember that love is a journey, not a destination. Stay committed, stay passionate, and stay connected. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Like what you're hearing on this podcast? Make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Don't forget to leave me a review and share it with your friends.